Hi, Iselin. Thank you for joining us. Iselin is from Emovo Care. Would you like to introduce yourself and your startup, please?
So I'm Iselin. I'm one of the co-founders of Emovo Care, and we have developed a hand exoskeleton specifically to assist someone who cannot move their hand in opening and closing the hand and also grasping objects. That's what we do, and we have a CE mark product by the end of this month, actually. So that's also the face of the startup at this point in time.
Wow, very exciting. And when did this whole process start? When did you, get the core team together?
The two co-founders started 4 years ago now. So we started in the beginning of 2019, and then we spent 2 years at EPFL in the lab of biorobotics with Auke Ishbert. And now we have spun off the startup in 2020, and we're based in Garage, which is a startup building right next to EPFL.
Yeah, how did this idea come about? Who got the idea and how did you continue? What were the first steps from the idea phase to developing this?
So it was my co-founder, Luca, who started developing the product throughout his PhD. And the reason why he is very passionate about this topic is actually his sister was born with cerebral palsy, and he has dedicated his life to try to find ways to help her be more independent in her daily life. And so in 2014-15 was when he then started this project, and he finished his PhD in 2018. At the time, I was actually working for a hardware startup in Norway. And so he knew that I came from this area, or I had studied this area in my master at EPFL. We also knew each other for a couple of years. And so he asked if I was interested in then joining his vision. So that's when I decided to join him, and we officially started in 2019.
And how would you say your roles are split? So what is his role as a co-founder and what is your role as a co-founder?
So Luca is the CEO of the startup, and so he's primarily working on fundraising and also on managing kind of day-to-day activity. And he also has, because he was inventing the product, he still is quite involved on the product development side. I'm doing more of marketing and sales, business development, and also regulatory and quality. So that's how our main hats are split in that. And I think that's quite important to actually find someone who has complementary skills and who also enjoys working on the areas that you might not have much competence in or are not interested in.
Yeah. And the full team, how many are you currently?
So we are 3 full-time employees. So we're a quite small team. And then we also work with students who do their master thesis projects within our team. So we're a team of 5 extended and then 3 full-time.
And about that, so our audience is mostly students from EPFL and UNL interested in startups or starting their own startups. Would you recommend having an experience with your startup as a student, or what profiles would you be looking for in that domain?
I think it's a really nice, it's a win-win situation in the end. For you as a student, you get to actually understand more of how a startup work and what that work entails, and also whether you enjoy working in a startup, because I don't think startups necessarily is for everyone, and it's not so easy to really know whether or not this is type of work that you enjoy. And so it's an opportunity to spend more of a limited amount of time, to see if this is the right path for you or not. So also for the startup, it's definitely a pro to have some fresh minds coming from the university, and that can contribute and also serve some educational value for them too.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. Are there any sectors you look for, or from EPFL? What kind of people are you looking for?
We have in the past worked with a quite broad spectrum of students. Right now, for example, we have a student from computer science, and then we have one who's more kind of a mix between SV and mechanical engineering. And in the past, we've had students from pretty much all of the STI departments, but mostly, I guess, microtechnic, SV, and mechanical engineering. We also, of course, look for students like coming from UNIL, for example. We haven't had many master students, like let's say someone who's been doing their thesis with us from maybe management of technologies or from business or marketing, but we are very open for it. It's maybe just that we don't have that same connection as we do with EPFL, as we do or as with UNIL, let's say. Yeah. But that's also a possibility. We're quite open-minded in that regard.
Yeah, very nice, very motivating for a student to hear. What do you think is the most important human quality for an entrepreneur to have?
I think there are a lot of different personality traits that come into play, and a mix between them. For me, I think definitely resilience is very important. It's you face a lot of challenges and defeats, and sometimes also rejections, and being able to kind of continue going and not letting that affect you easily is, I think, very important. You have to be either a bit naive or you have to be an expert. So not necessarily in between, because if you're naive, you think that, okay, this problem, I can solve this is fine. And then you kind of start going, and then when you're in it, it's too late to turn around. Or you're an expert, so you know exactly how long time it's going to take, you know how to deal with it. If you're in between, then I think it's a bit more I don't know, it's probably also possible, but it's something that I've heard. It's then you don't want to start a journey because you know that it's quite long and challenging, and you don't also have maybe the expertise to know that you can kind of get to the end of it.
Yeah.
Then I think you need to be quite self-driven. So meaning most of the time I'm working on a problem that I don't know the answer to, and sometimes you don't even have guidance or help in that particular area, and so you just have to figure it out and have maybe creative ways of figuring it out. And that is probably also one of the most important traits that we look for example, in students and interns, because it might not help to ask us, how do I solve this problem, or how do I do? We can discuss it, but in the end, it requires a lot of work to just figure it out yourself.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I would say maybe those three: a bit naive, have a lot of resilience, and then to be proactive and just solve the problem in a creative way.
Oh, that's a good list. I think it englobes very interesting aspects. Did you know early on you wanted to go in the startup pathway?
I think I've always been very interested in entrepreneurship in general. So even as a young child, I would always like create these fake companies with my friends at the age of, I don't know, like 7, 8, and to have little clubs. So we would exchange money and so forth. And then in my bachelor, I did as well kind of a minor in engineering, leadership, and entrepreneurship. And then also, after I finished my master, I worked for a startup initiative, so venture.ch. And after that, at kind of a hardware startup. So I would say actually, I do have some experience from also industry, so from big companies, but I've always enjoyed more working in smaller startups or scale-ups.
And is there something you changed in your lifestyle or a habit you took on to fit this entrepreneurial lifestyle?
I don't think I have changed too much, to be completely honest, but I think probably the way that I am as a person fit quite well the lifestyle. And so I would say for example, I've never maybe been someone who's been planning very far ahead, or had a need to really have stability or a routine on a day-to-day basis. And so that has made it maybe a bit easier, that I'm more comfortable with uncertainty. Of course, there are some lifestyle changes that you do, in terms of you might not always be able to say yes to exciting trips or to events, or even, let's say, a nice vacation, either because of time, energy, or financial constraints. And sometimes you don't have time to maybe do as much health exercises as you should, but it is in the end your choice, because you are flexible to make your own schedule and to decide what you do. So if you have good boundaries, I also think that you can do those things at a healthy balance as well. So I would say not so much lifestyle changes, but maybe because I was living in that way in any case.
And yeah, just to finish off, so 2 last questions. One specific piece of advice you'd give, or something you learned along the way, along your journey in this entrepreneurial world, that you'd like to give students who are looking to do this?
I would say I have a few tips.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think the people that you work with is very, very important. And so I think that's like a consideration to make early on. Have you been working with these people a lot? Do you know them well? And do you have complementary skills to work together as a team? And then I would say to have these boundaries, as I talked about, like it's important to separate between also personal and private and professional life, and to make sure you take care of yourself, because in the end it's never going to be a sprint. This is me speaking after 4 years. And so if you do, let's say the first 2 years I was working way too much, and then at some point you realize this is not going to work, so you start being like, no, on weekends I try not to work, or on the evenings I go home and I close the laptop. And so to just also see it more as a marathon than a sprint, and to then create these boundaries between home and at work, I think is very important.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And lastly, is there a book or a podcast or something you'd recommend to students, or something that motivated you?
I mean, I've read a lot of the different books. Do I have a favorite? I think one book that is quite important. What is it called again? It's on setting objectives and key results. That is like, it's maybe not my most, it's not what like made me want to go into this field, but I think it brings in a lot of important elements about like setting an objective and trying to measure also your results along the way. But there are a lot of good resources to help guide you in these questions that you have about how do you set the structure of the company up.
Yeah, very nice. Well, thank you very much. We can leave it there. So everyone feel free to follow Iselin online at Emovo Care. And yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.